This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Cocked. Locked. USAPrepares.com. Your dial is set correctly. We're delighted you're here. Converging threats are confronted daily by your instructors, and there's a link to your instructors on the website. This hour, we're going to learn about threats, serious threats to us. We're going to talk about smart meters. You're going to meet our newest instructor, Deborah Tavares. Welcome, Deborah.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Vincent, for having me on the program today. And there are many aspects of the smart meters that we are, of course, all facing. The most important aspect is to understand what these meters are really all about, and understanding that our level of resistance must escalate. We must refuse this massive assault upon us, because certainly what has happened with the smart meters, and those are the electric meters that are being attached globally to all of our homes. They intend on having gas, electricity, and water all connected to the global smart grid. And what this is required in order for a complete takeover of our system. Everything must be monitored. All energy resources must be monitored and measured in order for this global elite's totalitarian system to work. What do I mean by totalitarian system? Complete and absolute oppression through technologies. This is a new world order system that they're trying to bring in now. And it's extremely important for everyone to understand. This is required and forced control over every aspect of our lives, public and private. They do not have regards for ethics, morality, or life. So I'm going to be talking about some source documents, the most important documents for people to read immediately to understand that war was declared from these documents, and we do not know it. It's a silent weapons system. Now, as far as the smart meters are concerned, on stopthecrime.net, on the landing page, I gave a talk to the Oath Keepers. I outline the entire aspect of smart meters from a global perspective. I bring in military documents, source documents from the elites, and how this all ties together with United Nations Agenda 21 program, which they've now renamed to Future Earth, so that you can get a full perspective of the absolute massive dominance that is planned. This is global imprisonment. This is beyond mass surveillance. The cameras, all of the sensors that we see now emerging everywhere. You can go to Mount Weather, WEATHER. It is an underground facility that was built in the mid-50s, 47 miles outside of Washington, D.C. This is where the shadow government is housed. This is where FEMA has been fomenting this massive surveillance grid upon the United States. Make no mistake about it, we are becoming imprisoned. And the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is on stopthecrime.net, as well as the New World Order Exposed 1969 and the Iron Mountain Report. Very important to understand what these documents reveal. They reveal the plan in their words. This is not an author writing these. These are from the global controllers, the global power brokers, the Illuminati, the interdimensionals, whatever you want to call them. This is their plan, and it's important to understand their plan so that you will know how to psychologically adjust. You will then understand the the level of engagement that each and every one of us must commit to. The longer we stall with knowing what is occurring, the more difficult it will be for us to even attempt to unravel it. And they'll tell us in their documents that they win by consent being the primary victory. And consent is the fact that we are consenting by lack of knowledge. So read The Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Again, the source documents on stopthecrime.net. We're going to go over those a bit this morning. I know I'm going to be back up with you, Vincent, for more time in a few days, on the 10th, I believe, and I will go into this more fully. But for those that are listening right now, if you can start reading those documents immediately. And also notice that we have a newfound White House government document posted as well that is talking about increased frequencies. And I know, Vincent, before we came on the air, we were talking about the fact that we're seeing increased behavior and amped up brutality as demonstrated by the police and law enforcement to the civilian population. And this is largely to do with frequencies. Those are being amped up globally on all of us. This is ultimately able to create behavior and to control everything about us. This is part of the Silent Weapons program. And we have a notification on our website, again, stopthecrime.net. It's a warning for massive distribution to all police, fire, and first responders, giving them information about the pulsed microwave radiation and the effects to the brains. And why is this important to give to these men and women? They have cell phone towers that have been deployed on their properties. They have increased wireless technology in their vehicles. They are completely wired wirelessly to microwave radiation frequencies that the military has weaponized. This is the new type of strategy in warfare. It is fingerprintless. We cannot see it. It is behavior altering, and this is what is happening on a global basis. The United States has used this in Fallujah, where we have put these poppers in villages that emit frequencies that tone down the anger of the people whose villages and homes have been destroyed and families have been murdered. This is no new technology. This has been used in wars. In fact, in the shock and awe war, when we went into Iraq and we saw the Iraqi soldiers coming out of the ditches and foxholes waving white flags, it wasn't because they were trying to surrender to the United States. It was because we were using beamed microwave frequency technology on them, and we were burning them. These frequencies can burn your brains right out of your head and leave the rest of your body intact. This is the level of the new type of weaponry that is being engaged in warfare. Also, the biological and all of the chemical weaponry that is being dumped in aerosols now on villages and towns globally. And we're not certainly being left alone here in the United States. All of us know that we have chemtrails or geoengineering, weather modification. It has many, many purposes. It is dumping massive chemicals. It is increasing the volume and the massive eruptions, explosive eruptions of fires. Part of the reason that the U.S. Forestry has not allowed private property owners of ranches and of standing trees to remove trees is this: they're all part of this unbelievable network and this system to bring our country down into a new world order. Now, why do I say that? We know that the United States is run by global banks, international banks, and mega corporations that are posing as a legitimate government, and they are not. Our entire court system is corrupt. We take our grievances to court. It's a corrupt court system. It is installed by the international bankers to bring forward their agendas. They'll tell us that a silent weapon system operates upon data collected and obtained from a docile public by legal but not always lawful force. They tell us in the Silent Weapons document that when the government is able to collect tax and seize private property without justification, it is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. They go on in this document to also talk about why they have war. And so we have the massive reality of engaging in war in the Middle East right now. And this is, of course, multiple reasons why they create wars that we never can get out of. And this is what they'll tell us in the Quiet Weapons document. War is a balancing system. By killing the true creditors, the public, which the elites have taught to exchange true value for inflated false currency. So they are murdering us in war using a quiet weapons system. They've used depleted uranium on our troops. They're vaccinating our troops. Our troops are coming home. They're not getting the services that you would expect that they would from the VA. Why? Because we are enemies of the state. In the 1933 bankruptcy, we were stripped of our sovereignty. And again, you can read more about the details of that on stopthecrime.net. Scroll down to the USA Inc. flag and understand that during that bankruptcy, we were given as collateral our sweat equity, our property, our children, our souls was given as collateral against this phony bankruptcy that they stole all of America's gold and silver. And what has happened is we are agreeing to all of this by lack of knowledge. Our history has been rewritten. They're rewriting our corporate history with every new program that they bring into our schools. The No Child Left Behind was about leaving every child behind. We, all of us, even in our 60s, were left behind in our education. We, most of us, I know, were not taught about the bankruptcy. In fact, lawyers are told they're forced to take an oath that says they cannot reveal that bankruptcy of 1933. Otherwise, we would have been able to get further into understanding how we take action against this corrupt, illegal statute law. This is not law. We are consenting to statutes.
Deborah Tavares, she said in 15 minutes, everything that USA Prepares is about. Deborah Tavares is with us, and she is the director and CEO of StopTheCrime.net, StopTheCrime.net. She's a serious researcher into Agenda 21, the land theft, and she went deep into researching the global smart grid. And what you're hearing today is a result of that research. Deborah, let's go into the smart meters. For many who are listening, this might be a new term. Smart meter is one of those digital meters that records what happens and reports it back to the power company, and they can keep this information for as long as they want, which is probably forever. And they know how much electricity we're using, and they know when. So what is so bad about the smart meter?
Well, it's important for everyone to understand the intention of this massive global smart grid. This is not for our convenience to be able to monitor our usage and to be able to curb our financial cost. This is how they're selling it. They're selling it as a convenience. If there's a power outage, they can restore power more rapidly. That if we move, they can transfer our power more rapidly because it will all be remotely transferred as opposed to meter readers going out on properties and doing reads. I can tell you that this intention for this global smart grid is for a single operator. It's a centralized operation. Ultimately, Machines will control the grid. And again, for those that are not familiar with the details of the smart meter because of our limited time here on this station right now, Vincent, I would encourage everybody to listen to my talk on stopthecrime.net. I go into great deal about the grid and why you must understand what this is and what this really means. This is massive surveillance. This is creating prisons in your homes, and I know this sounds absolutely over the top to many that may be listening. But in the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document that was hatched in the 40s by Rockefeller, by Harvard University, by the international bankers and the U.S. Air Force, and was adopted as a Bilderberg policy in 1954, you will read about the intention of massive data mining. In fact, it's important to understand what you're hearing Snowden reveal right now, the NSA whistleblower. Much of what he is talking about was disclosed in this document. Again, this was written in the 40s and adopted as a policy. This Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars system in this document is a declaration of war. Now, why is that? They say in this document, whenever there's a few and powerful group that have the methodologies and the drive to control global economy, and they have not had public consent or public debate, it must be considered as an act of war. And that's exactly what this document is. It is a declaration of war using technologies that people do not even realize are war technologies. In fact, it's very important. I'm just going to read this quote. John F. Kennedy was aware that this was occurring, and he was assassinated for many reasons, of course, but only 10 days after he gave this very important speech at Columbia University, he was assassinated. And this full speech with him talking is on stopthecrime.net. I'm just going to read you a small paragraph right now so that you'll understand what you're hearing me say. Everything that you're hearing discussed right now is fully documented with government documents and intentions. So you need to read to understand and accept your current reality. It's only going to be when you understand the reality that you are really in and get out of the illusion that has been fomented. Most people are living in a conspiracy conscripted by a very few to deceive the masses. That is the conspiracy. Those that start learning what is real for our society and what is really happening behind the scenes, in the shadows, as you so often hear discussed, you will then understand what you must do to protect yourselves, your families, and your communities against all of the layers of assault upon us. And the smart meters are one of those assaults.
Deborah Tavares, we're talking about silent weapons. Stephen Ewer's with us. Synergistic Nutrition. You've heard his commercials on USAPrepares.com and the Genesis Communications Network. And I've asked Stephen Ewer to be on with us today for a lot of reasons. He has been to the Get Prepared Expo, and I buy his products. And class, I pay the same price that you do. And here's Mrs. Finelli came into the studio last week, and she said, I'm running low on One World Way. And she has the 5-pound container. And she said, I'm running low, so would you buy some more? And I said, sure. You want one? And she said, well, 2. 3. 6. Welcome, Stephen Ewer.
Thank you, Vincent. It's a pleasure to be on, and I'm so happy that your wife is loving the product as much as she is.
Well, you met her at the expo, and she is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and I guess we're not allowed to say a woman's age, but I married someone the same age as I am, and I'm just over 60, so I won't tell you her age, but she she will make a One World Way shake in the morning and one in the afternoon to evening, and she'll split it with me, and so she'll make a double, and we'll split it. She absolutely is convinced, Stephen, that the age spots that she had are gone because of One World Way. Now she takes. I want to be open and above board on all this. She takes Kyani Nitro Extreme, as do I, and she takes Dr. Joel Wallach's Beyond Tangy Tangerine, as do I, and she consumes 2 shakes a day of the One World Way, and she loves it. So let's talk about that. Is it possible that those bumps that we have on our skin as we get older can disappear with this product?
Well, you can't make any kind of claim like that, but the evidence of your wife experiencing that while being on the way indicates that there is improvements in her biochemistry from the consumption of the whey that enables the body to become empowered with its ability to detoxify itself at the cellular level. And I think the main thrust of my message that I've been giving for several years now on the GCN radio network has been most people have just looked at whey protein as some way to just appease their appetite, stabilize their blood sugar, and maybe use it as a weight loss tool and maybe as a muscle building tool, and really are not really comprehending the greater degree of importance that a non-denatured whey protein provides the body. And that importance is that this particular food in nature is the only food with the highest levels of the sulfur amino acid cysteine, and in a complete matrix of all the amino acids the body needs. So the body is able to then take and benefit from the protein that you're getting, but also benefit from the sulfur amino acid in producing much, much higher levels of glutathione. And glutathione is the body's #1 detoxifying chemical. And because of toxicity and aging and all the stress people's bodies are under in our time, in our era, people are not producing the optimal levels of glutathione, so they're experiencing more inflammation, more free radical damage, more toxin accumulation. When you get older and the proteins that your body makes, or the waste proteins that your body makes called lipofuscin, are not being excreted through the liver, then they build up in the tissues, and they start to show up as visibly on the skin as brown spots. And so if you could resurrect the glutathione production and you get it going throughout the whole body, then gradually, little by little, as your body cleans up all the tissues, one of the benefits that may happen is the ability to clean up these brown spots from one's skin.
Well, Stephen, I can tell you that when I was growing up in the 1950s, there used to be these commercials, and they would talk about age spots, and they call them liver spots, and that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, the technical name is lipofuscin, and you can call them age spots or brown spots for the common vernacular. They're all the same thing, and the unfortunate thing is that if it's happening visibly on the skin, it's also happening at the cellular level and on the nerves, and you're literally aging at the tissue level within your body. It's not just a cosmetic, downgrading of your looks. It's physically a deterioration of the brain and nervous system and all the tissues of the body in which it's deposited.
So a way to look at this is the body says, let's park this damage right over here, and we see it as these brown spots.
Yeah, it's more like just toxins. Basically, the body's producing. It has to deal with metabolic waste from the cell's production of energy. It has to deal with the damaged molecules from cooking food. Cooked food is just naturally going to create damaged molecules. When you're young, your body's pretty robust in being able to keep up with detoxifying all these things out on a daily basis. But as you get older, it falls behind, it accumulates, and when it accumulates to the level that it's no longer just being stored in the tissues in the body, it starts to visibly store on the tissues and externally on the skin and become visible as age spots. It's just garbage, metabolic garbage that should be hopefully avoided if you know what to do. And this is why I practice what I practice, because it's like quality of life is everything. I mean, the degree to which we're experiencing happiness on a daily basis is the dominant emotion, is the degree which you're living a successful life. And even though that's also a psychological, belief system about how you view things is part of that. There's also a very real biochemistry effect, and that is if you are not feeding your body correctly all the trace minerals and all the phytochemicals and all the nutrients and amino acids that it needs, and not overburdening it with toxins you can't handle, you're not going to be a happy person. I don't care how positive-minded you think you are at the conscious mind level. You're not going to be a happy, joyful person because your chemistry is actually spiraling down.
So is there a link between sulfur and obesity?
Yeah, it's basically your cells require three elements for proper cell division to occur. So it's sulfur, hydrogen, and yttrium. And for the DNA to synthesize proteins and make correct proteins within the cell and for the body to use, those three elements have to be there. And one of the elements that we are deficient in on a chronic basis is sulfur. And so sulfur is used to enable cells to divide correctly. It's also used to keep to absorb oxygen into the cell. So if you're getting enough sulfur, then you can absorb oxygen more readily into the cell, and then the cells are able to convert glucose into energy. And if, for instance, you didn't have enough sulfur to absorb the oxygen, then you wouldn't convert the glucose into energy, and your body would have reserve glucose in the blood, and the body would say, what can I do with this reserve energy but convert it into fat? So this is one mechanism that helps avoid that.
So yesterday, I was, after the broadcast, I was getting ready for the meetup, and I was dragging a little bit, and Mrs. Finelli said, oh, no, you're not dragging. Here, have a shake. And so I had some One World Way. Seriously, I'm not kidding about this. And made it all the way through till way past midnight. Got home late from the meetup. And I believe that I am benefiting from One World Way having more energy. Is that possible? Or is that...
Yeah, that's one of the natural outcomes because... if you are, first of all, your red blood cells need to be able to be free floating when they're flowing through the bloodstream. I used to look at people's blood under a microscope, take a prick of their finger, look at a drop of blood under the microscope, and most people with any degree of health challenges would have their blood clumping, which is not supposed to happen. The red cells are supposed to stay separated and free floating so they have maximum surface area to carry maximum oxygen levels. But when you're fatigued at all, that's usually lost. When you introduce the whey protein into the body, you increase your glutathione levels, which helps to neutralize free radicals and helps keep the blood cells free floating so they can carry more oxygen to your cells, so you make more energy, your mind functions clearer. Oxygen is the catalyst for all these reactions for fuel to be burned, just like a fire, in a little fire pit. If you didn't have enough oxygen and you're trying to burn wood in a fire pit, you'd get a lot of smoke and very little fire. But if you have plenty of oxygen, you'll turn it into a fire and you'll get a lot of heat and a lot of actual conversion of the wood into energy. It's the same thing with your body. A lot of people maybe taking the optimum supplements in terms of minerals and other things, but they're not addressing their pH, so they have low oxygen levels. And the red cells are clumped together so they can't carry the oxygen readily to the cells. So these two factors have to be addressed. You have to create an alkaline pH, and you have to keep your red blood cells charged. It's called the zeta potential charged so that they repel one another like two North Pole magnets or two South Pole magnets will repel each other. Same thing with red blood cells. They'll repel each other when they have their electron charge to them, and then they'll carry maximum oxygen levels to all the tissues of the body, thus giving you more energy.
One thing we haven't talked about is life expectancy. Is this something that, and I know we can't make a claim, but is this something that you believe would extend life?
Anytime, yes, I do. Anytime you raise the levels of glutathione and you detoxify the cells at a faster rate, cells are going to live longer, and that was proven by Alexis Carrel. Alexis Carrel did really, really excellent cell research on chicken heart tissue that he kept in a laboratory and fed it daily and washed it daily, and the cells would continue to divide into new cells indefinitely with no signs of aging for, I think it was 23 years when he recorded that in his book called Man the Unknown. And then about 5 years later, when it was 28 years into the experiment, they forgot to clean the cells one day and they died. That was the rumored reason why they died. But basically, some of the cell cultures he worked with, he said that he allowed the metabolic waste to accumulate around the cell, and when he did, the cell would age and then eventually die. But if the cells were kept free of metabolic waste, they would live eternally. And that's the main problem as to why we deteriorate as quickly as we do, is that our metabolic waste from our cells and our unhealthy foods that are coming from demineralized soils laden with pesticides, we are not benefiting. There's too much waste in our cells from both cooked foods and from metabolic waste and outside external toxins that don't get to filter out through the liver and the kidneys, and they don't get exhaled through the exhalation. So they build up in the tissues, and cells then start to become damaged, and then they age, and then they die.
Makes perfect sense to me, because I know what a plugged catalytic converter can do to the to the performance of an engine. And our son has a 2-stroke motorcycle that he uses around the farm, a Yamaha RT180, and it got a plugged exhaust or a plugged muffler, and it just would not run. Cleaned it out, and it worked great. So I can fully understand the analogy here. Stephen Hewer, Synergistic Nutrition, sgn80.com. I love it when Stephen Hewer is on the broadcast classroom with us. And he's with Synergistic Nutrition. If you'd like to get to his website, it's sgn80.com. Synergistic Nutrition. And Stephen Hewer's been at the Get Prepared Expo. He's been on the radio with us. And I've invited him to be on the radio with us because I buy his product. I pay exactly what you pay. Hard to believe. But that's not always the case in radio, but it is with me. So I buy this product. Mrs. Finelli loves it, and I wanted to share with you some of the reasons. So that's why Stephen Hewer's here. Stephen, there are other things that we need to talk about. We won't be able to get to it today, but I'd like to have you back, in about a week or so. You think we could do that?
Sure.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Finelli had a question for me to ask you. She takes 1 scoop for herself twice a day with milk. Now, she wanted to know, is there a benefit for her increasing her consumption to 2 scoops twice a day, just for her?
It's always dependent upon each person's, you could say, needs, and there's no one set amount because everybody's digestive tract development and capacity for breaking proteins down and absorbing the amino acids varies. Mm-hmm. So really efficient people absorb, protein more efficiently. They break a protein down into amino acids. They absorb the amino acids. They get more out of less and need to eat less. And so that's why God gave us an appetite, because there's no doctor and no textbook and no chart that can give you the amounts that are optimum for you. Mm-hmm. I tell people just listen to your body and let it tell you what it does and doesn't need. I would also advise not to forget about the fat content in your diet, because your body needs proteins and fatty acids to make it all work. And if she's doing the raw milk and the butter in her diet, then she's getting that. And also the, essential fatty acids is important with omega-3 and omega-6 from seed oils. So I've had people, in the beginning take 7 scoops a day because their body was craving it and they just felt really good. And after they were on that for a while, then they backed off to something more like 3, maybe 2 to 3 scoops a day. Mm-hmm. Personally, I do about 3 to 4 scoops a day. So I do, 2 scoops in the morning, 2 scoops in the afternoon, sometimes less than that. Just depends on what my body tells me.
Mm-hmm. What I like to do is I like to let it set for about 15 minutes, and it gets thicker. Is that acceptable? You recommend that or not?
I do. I like to do that too. It's fine. You can let this set for several days, and it thickens up in the fridge. It becomes a cold, delicious chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry drink that's even more flavorful than if you just mix it up and drink it right away. It's more flavorful if you let it set for a little while. So yeah. Okay.
What about the link to or the relationship between this and heart disease? What are the effects, or what have you found?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where there's been research that's been done where it's believed that the heart is needing sulfur as one of its fuel, and it's sulfated cholesterol, I believe it is. It's what's needed. There was this woman that speaks about this on another radio show extensively. She's done some research, and that, why is it that plaques develop primarily in and around the heart when you've got this entire, arterial system throughout your whole body and this venous or vein system throughout your whole body? you have to ask the question, well, first of all, why is it no plaques develop in the veins? They only develop in the arteries, and when they develop in the arteries, there's a high propensity for them to develop in their most concentrated areas around the heart. So you have to ask the question, why is that? And she asked that question and probed it and came up with that the body needs sulfated cholesterol in order to use it as a fuel to run the heart. So the body will actually, when it doesn't have the sulfated cholesterol, it will develop the plaques in and around the arteries and have white blood cells become a part of this plaque material. And the whole construct of plaque becomes a manufacturing spot to convert cholesterol into sulfated cholesterol. And so the sulfur deficiency is the main issue. And so you could say that by having the sulfur-rich, non-denatured whey protein in your diet, you're helping have more sulfated cholesterol to fuel your heart. It's a primary energy component for your heart to beat constantly.
Stephen, let me give out the number. 888-988-3325. 888-988-3325. Synergistic Nutrition. That's the number I call. 888-988-3325. Stephen Hewer, thanks for being with us. This is USAPrepares.com. Stick around for the second hour.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. And we're going to talk about money right now. We're going to talk about money. And we're going to be talking about protecting your assets. Paul Victor's with us. USAPrepares.com instructor. Welcome, Paul.
Good morning, Vince. How are you?
Hey, I'm really well. I want to share a couple quick stories with you before we get started. There's an operation, an organization on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's kind of a hotel, and the property was improved by the Vanderbilts at the turn of the last century, and it's been improved, and people go there as a destination. It's in North Carolina, at the top of the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's on a national park, so think of it like a motel, a hotel, a resort, and a lot of people go there to visit. They spend money. They have 90 employees. So I called the manager of it because I read a post that just hit the internet that the National Park Service has armed guards preventing the people who have reservations at this motel from attending. They've got reservations. It's called the Pisgah Inn, Pisgah Inn. Okay? It's a private hotel that holds a concession on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And the National Park Service has armed guards preventing people from going. Now, because of the government shutdown. So I talked to the manager. His name is Bruce O'Connell, Oconnell. So he runs his private business on the government land, and revenue is delivered to the government for running this operation. The Blue Ridge Parkway remains open, even though there's a government shutdown. And there are 90 employees that work there, and 40 to 50 of them live there. They live there, and they've been told that because of the government shutdown, 90 employees are going to be out of work because the government won't let any customers go there. And 40 to 50 of them who live there are going to be thrown out. So they have armed rangers blocking the parking lot 24 hours a day since last Friday. They receive no federal funding, and they don't have any employees. They pay into the government. Now, the man that I'm talking about who manages this, Bruce O'Connell, actually the owner of the company that manages this operation, was going to be on the air with us, and we were going to talk about this, and you and I were going to help with a strategy to protecting your assets from seizure, and that's another story I'm going to tell you in a couple minutes. Anyway, he's not going to be with us, and the reason he's not going to be with us, I just found out this morning that he's on his way to be with Glenn Beck. So yesterday, he committed to being on the air with us, and he sent me a cryptic email, no can do, the radio broadcast, and I found out from his staff that he's on his way to do an interview with Glenn Beck. So Glenn Beck jumped us. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now, Paul Victor, let's talk about this other situation. There's a supermarket in Michigan. It's called Schatz Supermarket. Now, it's a private operation. They've been operating a family business, a small supermarket. It's not a chain. They've been operating for about 30 years, father and daughter. So it's a family business, nice business, well run, kind of like the neighborhood business that you'd like to patronize. Well, the federal government decided without any warning that they would seize $35,000 from this operation. They seized everything that was in their bank account, their operating account. They stole it. The federal government stole it. So you would think that, a letter would come to the store saying, here's why we're doing this, and they have no idea why this money has been seized. It's under the federal forfeiture law. They've stolen their money. Now, Bob Chapman, one of our instructors who's since passed away, senior instructor, has said, don't keep any more than 35 days worth of operating funds in the bank. He warned us. He said, this is going to happen, and it's happening. So, Paul, you are in the business of helping us protect our assets from being stolen. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
You want to tell us a short story in the next few minutes, maybe a story or two about things that you've experienced, and then we'll talk about how those people could have protected themselves?
Well, yes. A very simple way to protect your assets would be to have an LLC, to operate through an LLC, a limited liability company. And limited liability companies are uniform throughout the 50 states. They're readily recognized. You don't have to jump through so many hoops as if you had an S Corp or a C Corp. You don't have to have minutes. And it's a flexible tool that can be set up as a holding company to hold assets or to hold cash. And properly set up, it divests your exclusive interest in whatever cash is in that account. So in other words, it's not exclusively yours. So if it's not exclusively yours, it can't be taken from you. It separates your liability. It divests your exclusive interest. But you still have full control over what goes in and out.
Okay. Can you share with us a story of how that has helped someone?
All right. Well, for an example, say in a situation where someone couldn't continue to pay on credit card debt, okay, and they defaulted on their credit card debt. And a natural course of events will occur, and it might come down to being sued by a debt collection company. And if the person does not respond, totally ignores it, this is what they're banking on. So they would get an automatic default judgment against that person. And if he lives in any of the states other than the 4 states that do not allow for wage garnishments, which is North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and Pennsylvania, your wages could possibly be garnished. Or if you're in a self-employment situation, that's going to be very difficult to do. It most likely won't happen. But you can have your personal bank account at risk. by having that account levied, seized, or swept for funds. And using an LLC will prevent that from happening.
Mm-hmm. So I have an LLC. It's called usapreparers.com LC. I chose LC instead of LLC. They're synonyms in Missouri. Most people have the LLC, so I decided just because of nomenclature, I would use LC, but that it's a synonym, and I have one. And it is for that purpose, because one of my concerns is that somebody might slip and fall based on something that they heard on this broadcast and sue me. So
yeah, it
I want to make
all the
sure.
time.
Well, I mean, I might say something that, somebody might do something based on something I've said, and for some reason I end up in court over their folly and stupidity, their own stupidity. I don't want to be sued by someone who's in the business of suing people for a living. So I have one, and I've had corporations for a long time, probably 30 years. I've had different corporations, so maybe even before that, actually back to the 80s, so a little over that. So I'm with you. So what is happening to people that would cause us, that you see commonly, that would cause us to want to form an LLC? What else is happening that we could protect ourselves? We talked about credit card debt collection. So if we run up some credit card debt and we want to make sure that we don't lose our other property, we would want to have an LLC. So what would give us another example, please?
All right. Well, here's an example. Say there's an elderly parent or parents that are in relatively good health, and they have a house that's free and clear, paid for. And say in the event of a catastrophic illness, that property could be subject to loss by the system to pay for the medical services. Mm-hmm. Okay, like the aged, people that are older are subject to horrific stories of their assets being seized because of, medical bills. Mm-hmm. But sure, if people would plan ahead, and if the parents set up an LLC, set up properly, and had the beneficiaries named as members, okay, and the deed was quitclaimed into the LLC, that's a protection mm-hmm. for them, because it's not going to be in their name. It's going to be in the name of the LLC. So that's one way of protecting property for the benefit of the beneficiaries later on, if you act in advance.
So what we're saying is, in advance, if you set up an LLC, the property is put in the LLC, and the family members are owners of the LLC. Should something happen, the family homestead cannot be seized.
Right, and it also avoids probate. If mom and dad are out of the picture, it's going to be business as usual, because the members have the ability to write checks and make disbursements, and it's going to just be business as usual.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much trust is needed from those involved? When we come back, when you have an LLC and you put mom and dad's home in there, and the children are part of the LLC, can the children raid whatever's in that LLC and spend it with reckless abandon? Let's find out. We're going to talk more about that with Paul Victor, usaprepares.com. I'm Vincent Finelli. We'll be right back. Class, one of my greatest concerns is that I'll be behind the microphone at the farm studio, and our cows will get out. Now imagine 100 cows and calves getting loose, and I'm at the farm behind the microphone. What do? Well, during the first hour, just before the first hour, of this broadcast, I was in the studio, and I got a call from our neighbor. He said, "Hey, Vinny, how's it going?" I said, "Good." He goes, "You know, there are a whole bunch of black cows on your road." And just want to let you know. I said, "Where are you?" He said, "Well, I'm on the road. I'm out of town." I said, okay. So you think they're ours? And he goes, yeah, I got a call from another guy, and he thinks they're yours too. So, so I immediately let Mrs. Finelli know that there were cows on the road, and not only our road, they're walking down the next road. I'm like, what do you do? So she just came back, and she said, they're not ours. So after this broadcast, I'm going to go and give each one of them a great big hug and thank them for staying home. Paul Victor's with us, and I'm going to give you his contact number as we get a little farther in this broadcast. Paul, here's my concern. We've got an LLC set up, and we have the home in it, the parents' home. They're getting older now. And we put the children as part of this LLC, and we're all in it together. Now, what about the trust, meaning the trust within the family about not being reckless with spending mom and dad's money out of it? How do we protect ourselves from that as the parents?
Well, when you set it up, the parents are still going to be in control, and there's going to be certain stipulations and certain disbursements made of what, the beneficiaries are entitled to do and what they're not entitled to do. So you control that through the operating agreement.
Okay, well, that answers a lot of questions for a lot of our class, because I'm sure that there are many of us listening are saying, well, what about, how do I make sure that I have money toward the end of, mom and dad's life? Okay, so what else do we need to know about protecting ourselves at this point, Paul Victor?
Well, there are many different situations out there. The last time we had discussed situations about foreclosure and how you can stay in your home for the longest possible amount of time. The more time that you're able to stay in your home without making payments is of more benefit to you. That's money in your pocket, and it will enable you to plan your plan B.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Situation.
Let's do a quick recap of that.
Okay. Well, for an example, I just had a gentleman call me earlier last week. He lives in Michigan, and his house is actually upside down. He has a first mortgage and a second mortgage on his property. 75 years old, had some unsecured debts that he just cannot afford to continue to pay. And his mortgage payments are very difficult to continue to pay. And actually, his second mortgage payment winds up to be more than the first, because he's been in his house for a while, and he's paid down the first mortgage, and in the interim took out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, on his home in the form of a second mortgage, and he just can't continue to make these payments. So what is he going to do? Give up? Roll over? Or how about a strategy like stop paying on the second mortgage?
Okay.
If he stops paying on the second mortgage, there's really not much that can be done. They can't force a foreclosure because the first mortgage is in first position.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and
so that buys more
ahead.
time. That buys more time.
Absolutely. Absolutely,
Okay.
And as far as if any of the creditors sue him and get a judgment, well, a judgment would go against him personally, and naturally it would carry over to any real estate that he might own, but he's got a house that's upside down. So that's sort of a moot point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So when we come back, would you share with us the advice and counsel that you have in a situation like that?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. Paul Victor, VinFinelliUSAPrepares.com. And if you want to get in touch with him, 404-477-4215. We'll be right back. I've got some breaking news for you, class. Obamacare. Now, how arrogant of a name is that? Obamacare. It used to be called the Affordable Care Act, and obviously it's not affordable. It's the Unaffordable Care Act. But in Maryland, it is taking off. Unbelievable results. They have 326 enrollees in the state of Maryland. What a success. There's nothing this administration can do right. Nothing. And now, oh, geez. Paul Victor and I are talking about this case study we're doing right here, a brief case study on an upside-down house, second mortgage, home equity loan, unsecured debt. Paul, please take us through a little bit more of that, and then let's talk about the Schott supermarket and what they could have done to protect their account from the forfeiture power of the United States government. So this one case where we've got a second mortgage, home equity loan, please tell us a little more about that.
Social Security.
Hey, did we lose Paul?
And
Okay. Go ahead. We're here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. All right. In his case, he's collecting Social Security, and even if he got a judgment against him, Social Security, pension money, disability payments are all off the charts. The collectors do not have access to that, although they're very sneaky. Okay, if he does get a judgment, and sometimes you can get a judgment and not know it because they did not serve you properly. They didn't give you notice. And they place a judgment against you, and if you can catch that soon enough, you can challenge that. But if they do sweep your account, it's up to you to prove that that was Social Security money or disability money, and it shouldn't have been taken. And you'll eventually get it back. But by using the LLC, you can totally avoid that situation to begin with.
Okay. Now, in the case of the Schott supermarket in Michigan, where a little over $35,000 was stolen from them by the federal government, that through forfeiture, okay, could this have protected them, and what could they have done as a small business? Because I know that we have a bunch of small business owners listening to this broadcast. What could they have done that would protect them from forfeiture?
Well, I don't know how his business is structured, whether he has an S Corp, a C Corp, or a DBA. It all depends. Mm-hmm. But you can set up a parallel LLC for your company. Say if you're an S Corp, you can set up a parallel LLC and use that as a holding company and put the funds instead of the business account, put it in the holding company and make your disbursements out of that, because it's after-tax money that's going in there anyway. Mm-hmm. And you would just report your taxes like you normally do, but it's held in a holding company.
Well, I think that's a very interesting strategy.
That might have prevented that situation.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm asking, because I know there are a lot of business owners who would like to make sure that they are not targeted by the federal government. And I can just envision that that's what they're going to do to me. I think they're going to say, most people believe, most of my neighbors think I'm in the mob. And the reason they think I'm in the mob is because I have a last name of Italian descent. I have a long driveway, and I have no visible means of income. Okay? I mean, they don't think that I'm a farmer. I don't know what they think, but they don't think I'm a farmer. I mean, I've got cows, and that's what I do, and I'm in blue jeans, and right after the broadcast, I'm going to be dirty, grimy, greasy, and have mud all over me. But I don't know what they think. But I can just see the federal government saying, you know what, I think that guy's in the mob, and I think he's money laundering, and they're going to seize my accounts. And so to protect myself from that, I could set up a parallel LLC and keep my operating funds in that so that they have no access to that without due process, correct?
Yes. Yes,
and that's the
when
problem.
You set it up, you set it up with charging order protection. And that's it bringing more people into the structure other than yourself. Single-member LLCs are just like a DBA, and you're wide open for abuse. So it has to be structured properly, and this is what our program goes through with you.
So a carefully designed asset protection plan can shelter our home, our auto, savings, and almost, if not everything we own from creditors, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what about avoiding bankruptcy and still keeping the wealth we've accumulated? Tell us about that.
Well, in the case of getting back to foreclosure and credit card default, a lot of people feel that they should file bankruptcy, and bankruptcy has its place, but I would use that as a last resort, because usually people that file for bankruptcy want to get a Chapter 7, which is a complete wipeout. But if you have any kind of assets at all, most likely it's going to be referred to a Chapter 13, which is going to be a payment plan. And that's basically an invitation for all your creditors to gang up on you at one time and get a piece of the pie. So if you're in a position where you can't pay to begin with, what makes you think you're going to be able to pay through a Chapter 13?
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so
by just defaulting, you're challenging the debt. You're creating a challenge, and it has to go through the natural course of events. Okay, they're going to try to get a judgment against you, but if you're in a position where really nothing can be taken, what's the sense of filing bankruptcy? Chapter 7 is for people that don't have anything to lose anyway. So why do that?
What about heirlooms, Paul? I have some heirlooms that I would like to keep in the family. I happen to own a hunting cutlass that belonged to a very famous person, and it's quite valuable. And I would hate to see that stolen from me through some trick of the federal government or some trick of the legal system. How can we protect our heirlooms?
Well, if they're readily available and visible, it's at risk. Mm-hmm. Just use your imagination in that sense.
Yeah. So it's not visible. So how do we keep creditors from finding our assets?
Well, basically, they're going to find any assets that you divulge. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whatever you tell them is basically information that they're going to have. Mm-hmm. And are you under any obligation to spill your guts?
Oh, I remember President Ronald Reagan had a memory like a sieve. He couldn't remember anything. I mean, he was testifying before Congress, and he kept saying, "I don't recall. I don't recall." I mean, I think it was 113 times that he couldn't recall something he'd just done. So, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so let's. So we were talking about discovery. When the other side is going through discovery, we have a tough time remembering. And by the way, the character that I play a lot when I'm in public, when I'm working with the other side, is I am Columbo. I mean, I turn into Columbo, and I'm really confused and forgetful, and I scratch my head, and I look around, and my ADHD kicks in. I can't concentrate on anything they ask me. That's who I am, and I'm able to turn that on very, very quickly. So let's turn our business into a creditor-proof operation. Tell us what we need to do, please.
Well, the first thing you got to consider your household a business. Operate your household like a business, and you do that by setting up a limited liability company. And you're going to have your after-tax funds being deposited into that account. It's set up properly. It has charging order protection. And if anybody comes down the pike and sues you, gets a judgment against you, the money in that account is safe because it has the charging order protection, and the money is not exclusively yours. It's divested of its exclusive interest. It's like rich people. They own everything, and if they get involved in a lawsuit, I don't own anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's all owned by the LLC or the corporation or the trust or something like that, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we divest ourselves from all of those assets, and we put them into an LLC, and we operate our household as a business. Okay.
Yep.
And please continue with that, because I think this is fascinating.
Well, you're paying your expenses through the LLC.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and in the meantime, you can still have a checking account in your name, in your personal name, but keep very little money in it. Just maybe enough to pay an electric bill, water bill, light bill. Mm-hmm. And if anybody's looking or coming after your assets, they'll see, wow, this guy's only got $100, $200 in his account.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about the LLC, it's anonymous. We present people with options on which LLC to get. There's Delaware, there's New Mexico. You could set up an LLC in any state, but we find that New Mexico is the least expensive, and it gives you the anonymity that you need. And it's very simple to set up.
Paul, can you help us with the costs and a little bit of the process of setting up one of these when we come back?
Sure.
Paul Victor. Class, Paul Victor's with us. Paul Victor, and he and I are talking about setting up an LLC. We talked about the state of Delaware, the first state, and New Mexico. And I asked Paul to share with us the process. What is the process, and what are the costs? And if you'd like to get in touch with Paul Victor after the broadcast, preferably, 404-477-4215, 404-477-4215. Paul, please tell us the process and the costs associated with setting up an LLC.
Okay, our program gives you the instructions on how to access what we call the incorporation module, and you have all the contacts for whatever LLC you wish to purchase, whether it's Delaware or New Mexico, and the contact information is there, and the cost of setting up a New Mexico LLC, for example, is only $149. And that takes care of your first year of your registered agent's fee, and there's a recurring $99 registered agent fee per year. That's the most inexpensive. For example, Delaware, I believe they went up to $250, and that's a recurring fee of $250 a year. So you can do everything right online, and there's complete instructions in our program that shows you how to do that.
Okay. Now, is it required that, Paul, that you have the recurring fee, or can you just pay the original setup fee and then stop right there? Is it something that you have to pay every year to continue, or not?
Well, yeah, it's advised to do that, but if you know of anybody that lives in New Mexico with an address, you could name them as the registered agent, and you wouldn't have to pay the fee.
Okay, so the idea is you really need to have someone representing your interests in the state in which you form this limited liability corporation.
Yes, and the New Mexico LLC does provide the registered agent. And the registered agent is actually for you receiving any communications, if there's, any communications at all regarding that LLC, the registered agent has to be able to take care of that and get back to you.
Okay. Is there any downside to forming an LLC? Is there something that we need to be wary of? Because I don't know of anything.
Well, if you set up a limited liability company as a holding company and say you're self-employed, you don't want to commingle funds. You need to set up a separate LLC for your business. Okay, that's one thing that you should be aware of. So the house is totally a separate entity from your business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about if we want to drive down liability insurance and let's say protect ourselves from lawsuits that we really shouldn't be involved in, nuisance lawsuits? Is this a tool for doing that also?
Yes, some people have put their vehicles in an LLC, and that's fine because if you're involved in an accident and there's any kind of liability, the only thing that could be taken is what's in the LLC, and if you just have the vehicle, then the vehicle is just at risk. So you don't want to put any other assets in an LLC where a vehicle is involved.
Okay, so let's say a person had a car collection with 3 cars. Would there be 3 LLCs with these 3? Let's say the person had a Porsche, a nice Porsche, an antique, and an antique Ferrari, and an antique Bugatti. 3 LLCs, or put them all in one?
Well, I would split it up into 3.
Okay. And can you have one registered agent handle all of that with one fee, or there are 3 separate fees?
There would be 3 separate fees.
Okay. Paul Victor, and you can reach him at 404-477-4215. 404-477-4215. And class, there's a link to Paul Victor on the website, usaprepares.com, page 1. And also, if you want to see my thoughts on the World War II memorial shutdown, page 1, USA Prepares YouTube video.